Phonics keeps teaching letter chunks that don't actually exist in the writing system. Here's the problem, and here's the proof. Before we begin, we need to ground ourselves in one essential idea. A grapheme's natural habitat is inside a morpheme. A morpheme's natural habitat is inside a word. A word's natural habitat is inside a sentence. When phonics breaks this ecology, children get confused. Let's look at how that happens in a word like action. First, here's the issue with how phonics treats TION. Phonics teaches kids TION says shun. It's one sound. It's one chunk to memorize in a sea of chunks. But TION is not a unit in the writing system, and it crosses morpheme boundaries. And graphemes never cross morpheme boundaries. Remember, graphemes live inside morphemes. This alone tells us phonics is creating something that cannot actually exist, and it hides a word's true structure. When we hide structure, it hinders the learning of spelling and it hides meaning. We don't need to add concepts that increase cognitive load. We need to simplify as much as possible and just teach what is there. Next, here's the real structure of the word. When we analyze action using real orthographic logic of English, the structure is ACT plus ION is rewritten as ACT-ION. Act is the base. ION is the suffix. The T belongs entirely to the base, act, and the I belongs entirely to the suffix. There is never a moment when these letters form a single grapheme. Phonics fuses them together. The writing system does not. Let's look at the sound. Why do we hear sh? Phonics teaches TION says shun, and that's exactly the problem. By lumping these letters together, phonics hides the real structure and masks the jobs of each grapheme. Here's the truth. The I in the ION suffix is a phonological marker. It's not part of a grapheme writing the sh sound. It's not part of a TION chunk. It's a marker that influences the pronunciation of the consonant before it. So in action, T remains part of the base act. I remains part of the suffix ION, and I is not pronounced. It marks the T as sh in this environment. That's all. Nothing structural has changed. The spelling is still ACT plus ION. And here's why the sound shifts. These words passed through French, where consonants were historically palatalized before front vowels. So, the structure stays the same. The sound changes, and phonics misinterprets that sound change as TION is a chunk. But the writing system never changed those boundaries. The problem is teaching fake graphemes overloads kids. Every time phonics invents another chunk, TION, SION, CIAN, TIAL, CIAL, we create more fake graphemes for children to memorize. This increases cognitive load, especially for kids with weak working memory, especially the phonological loop portion. ADHD, language disorders, or autism. They're memorizing structures that aren't real. This is one of the biggest bottlenecks in literacy instruction. Reducing the number of graphemes reduces cognitive load. When we stop teaching invented clusters like TION and instead teach the real structure, ACT plus ION, everything becomes clearer. Kids suddenly have fewer units to memorize, a more accurate map of the writing system, improved reading, improved spelling, and no exceptions. And here's the key. When kids learn the system instead of shortcuts, they learn reading, spelling, and comprehension together in one integrated model. Not drilling, not chanting, not guessing. Real structure brings real clarity. SWI and explicit teaching of phonology. This is where structured word inquiry stands apart. SWI teaches phonology in a way that is both direct and explicit, because SWI teaches phonology in its proper place. Not explicit meaning drill, not direct meaning repetition. Explicit means precise. Direct means accurate and straightforward. And while we're thinking about terminology, phonology is integral. but phonology is not paramount. Morphology and etymology are paramount. They are at the top. They create the framework of the writing system. Phonology fits into that framework, not above it. Morphology, etymology, and phonology are three parts of the same whole, and the writing system only makes sense when all three are understood together. That is explicit instruction. That is direct instruction. And struggling learners deserve nothing less. So, what is truly paramount? Let's bring this together. TION is not a grapheme. It crosses morpheme boundaries. The I in ION marks the T sh. It's a phonological marker, not a sound chunk. Fake graphemes overload working memory and confuse learners. Real structure reduces cognitive load and increases accuracy. And SWI teaches phonology in its rightful place, inside morphemes, where they live. Morphology is paramount. Etymology is paramount. Phonology is integral, but it is not paramount. Morphology, etymology, and phonology work together as one system, and it is paramount that teachers, specialists, and parents understand this so children can learn the real writing system without unnecessary confusion. That is clarity. That is precision. And that is what children and teachers deserve. Struggling learners aren't struggling because something is wrong with them. They're struggling because the system hasn't been taught clearly. Let's change that. And with structured word inquiry, we can.